So, just tell us a little bit what got you into missions and heading to Japan.
Well, I'll briefly describe. My grandparents were part of the crew of missionaries who went to Japan in the 1950s. So they were Martin and Evelyn Clark, and they're the ones that I mentioned probably were here at some point. So I grew up, my dad had lived in Japan from the age of 10 to 15. I grew up knowing about Japan, getting cassette tapes with messages from my grandparents in those days. And then my father was a preacher, but eventually felt called back to Japan, and they moved back to Japan after I finished high school. So Japan was always part of my heart and my experience, I guess, growing up. And then we went to Japan as English teachers for a couple of years to save money for a trip that we were hoping to take. So I'll let Chad go on from there.
Okay, yeah, we went to Japan, got married, went to Japan as English teachers, lived there for a couple of years. We were Christians, but God was not the number one priority in our life at that stage. And but we had a dream. I had a dream to travel around the world, and so I had three jobs. Jennifer had 2 jobs. We saved up money, paid off our school loans, and went off on this big kind of backpacking trip around the world. Basically, we went from Moscow to Cape Town overland, and didn't use an airplane. A little bit of sea, and during that time, God really got a hold of our lives and totally changed us and directed our paths, and really, yeah, our lives just got totally changed in Africa, especially 14 months in Africa, and a good chunk of where we experienced God the most was in Niger and Chad and some of those really rough countries, and so God used that time. And halfway through the time in Africa, we started really praying, God, what do you want us to do with our lives? How do you want to use us? And we started listing up all these countries and places that we had lived. And each day, Monday, we'd pray for this set of countries. Tuesday, we'd pray for this set of countries. And as we prayed, God, give us a heart for wherever you're calling us. And we were invited to a few different teams in Africa to join their teams. But we felt, as the more we prayed, that God was saying, go to Japan.
Okay. So you had only been there to teach English at that point?
Correct.
Okay.
Jennifer had lived there a year between high school and college.
So did either of you know much Japanese before you got there?
Jennifer did.
I knew some. I taught little kids English for that year that I was there, so they don't do much except for the ABCs and cat, dog, whatever. So I'd picked up a lot during that year. I was still young enough to pick up some, but we kind of have learned on the job, I guess.
So when you were there to teach English, did you teach where you're working right now?
At that time, we taught in the city of Osaka, which is where we started our mission work. When we came back from that Africa trip and became missionaries, we moved to Osaka City, which is where we had been as English teachers, and we had relationships there. So now we're in the northern part of Japan, a place called Ishinomaki.
Okay, and Osaka, where was that in relation to where your grandparents were?
It was the same city, and there are several traditional, what we would call maybe more traditional churches planted around that city in the years following the war, and so we kind of looked at the map and tried to find a different area of the city where we could go, and our heart was to start something new, but it was in that same region. And my parents are still living there.
Okay. So now you're moving up to the northern region, and is there much of a difference in culture between the Japanese in the south or the north or the different areas, or is it pretty much the same?
There are some differences. The differences in dialect, a lot of different words, different way, the verb ending.
Southern accent down.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Southern accent versus New York or something, but maybe even more pronounced than that. But culture is pretty similar. The biggest difference for us is rural versus urban. We were in a huge metropolitan city before, and so it was a lot of white-collar workers. The people that we connected with in the beginning parts of our ministry were college-educated, white-collar workers, and now we're in a smaller town. They call it the countryside. It's a city of 120,000, 140,000 people. That's a small town for Japan. And there, it's a lot more blue-collar. So that difference is the biggest difference for us. Nobody speaks English in the place we live now. So our ministry, in Osaka, we had a lot of people who wanted to learn English coming to us. But in where we're at now, we almost never have anybody who even wants to learn English come around us.
But yet, are they open to you guys, or to, I should say, Americans? Are the people in Japan open to Americans, or do you have to really establish a relationship before there's something that will happen?
In general, the Japanese are very favorable towards Americans. We rarely have anybody that is not. And we have found that especially after the tsunami, there was a flood of relief groups that came into the area to help out from all different kinds of groups, as well as secular organizations as well. But in the area where we are now, one of the comments that we've received numerous times, especially after 2 years, 3 years, is that all kinds of volunteers came in and helped, but you Christians are the ones who have stayed. And they've actually, in that area, kind of given us a term they call the Kiristo-san Tachi, which is more the Mr. Christs. And so that's kind of the term that they have labeled us as, it rather than the normal Japanese word for Christian. So, yeah, we're very, very welcome. I think God is there's a lot of favor towards us right now in that region.
Well, what's the predominant religion in Japan, if there is one?
The main religion in Japan is Buddhism, and then Shintoism, kind of, you can simply say like ancestor worship, that kind of thing. There used to be worship of the emperor, those kinds of things all mixed in. But practically speaking, anyone, I'd say, under 45, you ask them, and most of them would say, you say, what is your religion? No religion, mushukyo. We have no religion. And so when they get, maybe their parents die, then they start to figure out, what Buddhist sect is our family in? Because the funeral rites are all connected with Buddhism. And so then about that stage of life, people start trying to figure out, what group are we in, and where are we supposed to bury, grandpa? Where are we supposed to bury, mom and dad? And so for the young people, most of them, it doesn't have too much practical meaning on a daily basis. On New Year's time, they'll go to the temple, and it's just a celebration time, throw in a little money at the temple and get a little charm or something. But for the daily life of the vast majority of people, it doesn't have too much bearing on their life.
So the religion, actually, the Buddhism hasn't changed them at all, or they don't, their life isn't geared towards Buddhism, their life is geared toward themselves.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, and it changes them on subtle ways, cultural levels. Not necessarily like going to the temple every week, listening to a message doesn't change them, but it's filtered into the culture and the system, the rhythms of life in Japan. So it affects them on that level.
Now, are the Japanese open, though, to learning, and especially the under 45 crowd, I guess, that if they're not attached to Buddhism per se, are they open to listening to new ideas?
I would say it depends on the person, obviously, but we have found in the region where we are now, because of the influence of a lot of people who have come in there, we feel like the hearts of the people are a lot more open. I think they're open to listening, but a lot of people think that it's just a Western thing. And so if you have, like we were talking about the boxes earlier, if you've got people who kind of aren't so enamored with their culture anymore, but they think Americans are cool, they might, in the cities, in the white-collar areas, be more open, what we would say open to Christianity. But we're finding now in the area where we are, people are just, they're broken open. And so that's where I think the message that we have to give them of hope and life and joy and faith is where they're really open to right now.
Cost of living, is it expensive there to live in Japan?
Yes, in the cities especially, it's expensive. Rent is expensive. Regular food items are expensive. Although coming back to America, things are going up, so it's getting comparable to living in a city in America for sure.
And when it comes to food, it seems as though they've got the sea there, so seafood would be plentiful. But what about fruits and vegetables? Do they have to have those shipped into the island, or is there still enough farmlands around Japan that they can grow the food that they need?
Much of the fruit and vegetables are imported, and so they tend to be rather expensive. What is grown there is very delicious, but it's also very expensive because it's limited. So, I don't even know what you're paying here, but we pay depending, and it's also more seasonal than it is here. And so you might pay $1 for the equivalent of $1.50 for an apple, or I don't know, a package of strawberries would probably run $6, something like that.
No, I just lost my train of thought here. Let's see if we can get back on. So what are, as far as the ministry goes, what are some of the, and let's start with the bad. What are some of the discouragements that you may have come across in the 17 years there in the ministry?
How much time do we have?
Maybe hit the highlights.
The lowlights.
Well, that's better said.
The discouragements that we've come across in ministry. We've had, all kinds of discouragements over the years. Challenges with, we had an amazing team in Osaka, and one of our guys got married, and that ended up really changing the dynamics. A very controlling relationship that he entered into, and it just ended up causing them to pull out people. So we ended up effectively experiencing a split there. We've had Christians fall into sin. The heartache this on December 31st. We were back in Osaka. I was every year over the New Year's. I try to do a prayer retreat with our leaders in Osaka, and so our family was back in Osaka from northern Japan, and got a call from our teammates. One of the girls that we've been reaching out to, this is horrible, but had molested another girl that was a Christian from Osaka. And it just, this horrible situation that we had to deal with that affected both of our ministries in Osaka and in Ishinomaki. And it just kind of threw us for a loop. How do you minister, protect these people, at the same time love these people you're trying to reach out to that are so messed up in sin? And so it just heartaches of stuff like that I don't know. That's probably not what you're hoping for. I don't know what you're hoping for.
No, I'm hoping.
You want more lower? Okay.
No, that's okay. I'm hoping for you to give those things so that when you go in is the next question, obviously, what are the joys of ministry? Because I know in the United States, our ministries are ups and downs.
Yeah.
The same thing. Those things that you can't understand. But there's the joys, and hopefully they overshadow the bad things. So what are the joys that you've experienced?
Okay.
I'll share one that was also really discouraging this last winter and has glimmers of hope in it, for one example. But we're working with this social enterprise. It's called Nozomi Project. We mentioned I'm wearing one of them right now, but working with 19 women. And there's a lot of junk that happens when you've got a small house holding 19 women, just to start with, who bring a lot of baggage with them, who've been through a disaster and this kind of thing. But anyway, we haven't maybe realized some of the desperation that's happening in some of their lives just back at home. And we found out, or one of the women accused another woman of stealing. And so we're like, oh, there's no way it could be this person. We love her. She's been one of the ones that we've reached out to their family over the last 4 years. They're involved in different areas of our ministry as well. Well, anyway, we ended up having to set up camera and caught her red-handed, actually stealing money out of this other woman's purse, as well as 2 of our teammates. And so how do you show grace in a situation like this? And so it was a struggle just among our team on what grace looks like. But anyway, we end up allowing her to leave without firing her, and without telling the entire group of ladies what had happened and why she was leaving. Amazingly, the woman who had been victimized basically didn't want to press charges, didn't want to make everybody know about the situation, which we're just blown away at. But that happened, and then a couple weeks later, when I met this lady for the first time, the one who had done it. She's one of my good friends. We have our boys in the same class. She just comes up to me bursting in tears, apologizing all over the place, and we're just trying to show her forgiveness. And then she kind of disappeared for a while, but anyway, she's about a month later started coming to our worship time on Sundays. This is the one who committed the crime. But it's been just a wonderful opportunity to show her what grace looks like, to show her what Jesus wants to do in her life. And then about 2 months after this had happened, we had a team there that was doing an event, a team from Singapore, and we found out that both of these women were probably going to be there at the same time. So we're like, oh no, what do we do? Anyway, we told, first of all, the one who had been hurt that this other lady's probably going to be there, and she's like, oh no, that's okay, I'd love to see her. So we're like, wow, that's great. And then, so I go and tell my friend, this lady's probably going to be there, but she knows that you might be coming and she'd like to see you. So anyway, she ended up showing up. And as we watch this play out, the lady that has been victimized is sitting across the room, and she sees the other one hesitantly walking into the room, and she jumps up, runs across the room, and they just hug each other, and they're all in tears, and we're all in tears watching it. And of course, nobody else knows why. But anyway, it was like a picture of the prodigal son almost. It just was very touching, but as well as just seeing some healing that needed to take place. It's not all, a bed of roses at this point yet, but watching that happen and seeing this one receive grace in just a huge form from somebody who's not a believer yet. She's on that path too. But both of these women, we just continue to pray for them and try to speak into their lives. The other woman is still working with us at Nozomi, but anyway, that's both been a huge heartache for our team, as well as a joy. So
Each and every salvation, every baptism, every time someone says yes to Jesus is extreme joy for us. I mean, and they're few enough that it's each and every one of them are precious to us.
And when people do come to Christ, do they have a sense of excitement or enthusiasm that will cause them to talk to their neighbors or their relatives?
Case by case, some of them still in fear. And, we had a lady who became a Christian in October. She immediately told her daughters and some people, but she couldn't tell her husband. And it wasn't until just about a couple months ago that she was able to finally get up the courage to tell her husband. So it's case by case. Some people, they're on fire, We had a girl who was baptized immediately. She was a teacher, immediately sharing with her students. Some of her students came to Christ, immediately started going out on the streets with us to this really messed up area of Osaka and doing evangelism. And so there, just kind of like it is here. There's some people that are more open, willing to be transparent, and others that are fear is still holding them back.
Well, the one lady, what is the fear with telling her husband? Does it have to do with religion? Does it have to do with domineering male in society, or what?
This case, Yuko's one of my really good friends there, and she's married into a very strongly religious family, and so it's all about her husband and his family. And so her husband, I think a relative in the family had passed away. She has a distant relative that's a Christian, and they said, we cannot come to the funeral, we're Christian. And so in her head image, and probably what has been passed on to that family, is anybody who becomes a Christian, you immediately have to, you can't have this Buddhist altar in your home, you can't go to any of the family events, you can't do any of this cultural stuff. And so I think it was not, we've tried to tell her differently, but in order to honor the family, you need to be there. In order to make those bridges, you need to be there. But her fear of their perception of what she would be able to do and would not be able to do was what kind of prevented her from telling them at first. Her fear that the mother-in-law, especially that she lives with, would be very against her faith.
Now, you've got several children. What's their role, if any, in the ministry? I mean, are they able to reach out to friends and bring those families at least as contacts?
Yeah, our three youngest, we've put all of our children into the Japanese local schools, and so that has given us as family opportunities just to be involved in the community. And currently our three younger ones are still in the elementary school, so wherever we go, because there's kids, you have opportunities just for conversations and opportunities just to talk and be real with people. Our oldest daughter is heavily involved in kids ministry with our church on Sundays and other times. So there's different ways that they are able to be involved.
Yeah, I was going to say, because of the kids, we built a park after the tsunami. There's a whole government kind of subsidized housing, so really kind of a real poor section of Ishinomaki that's real near where we live right now that we built a park next to. And so we've gotten to connect with tons of kids. And so our kids play with some of those kids. A lot of them are real rough, so our kids are kind of intimidated sometimes. But it's given us a way in. Jennifer was the president of that neighborhood association last year. She got asked to do that. And so instead of being an outside agency, which we were in the beginning, kind of coming in, building this park, the last year we kind of became from the inside and got connected that way. And we really opened up a lot of doors for us and a whole lot of trust with the school. It's all connected with the school and PTA and everything. And so it gave us a lot of trust and credibility with the people there.
And how have the people responded even now as far as the tsunami goes? I can't even remember what year that was. Was that a couple years ago or something that it was?
2011, March 2011.
I guess that's more than a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess there's still rebuilding going on. People's lives are still coming back together. Is that something that still is having an effect on people either searching or questioning why this has all happened to them?
Yeah, it's definitely still going on. So a lot of rebuilding. They've cleared out all the rubble. There were just mountains and mountains of rubble for a long time, but all of that's cleared out right now, and they're starting the rebuilding process. The government's building apartments to move people into. There are still tens of thousands of people living in like trailer house type structures, and yeah, it still affects people a lot. Like I talked about last night, there's still people who come to us regularly, and they're still aching over the loss of a wife, or a child, of whatever. And we can talk with them and pray with them and share with them and listen to them. So.
Obviously, we live right on the coast, and there's people still that haven't been back to the ocean, which is just a few blocks away. They just can't go there yet. So it's a fearful thing for them. So we've done some things at the beaches with our group, just because we like to go to the beach, and it's a good way to help them kind of make that step back to the ocean. But one time we did that, probably 60-70% of the local people who were there just expressed at the end thankfulness for having been able to go back for the first time with us, and that it was an encouragement to them. So it's definitely still a huge part of their thinking and their hearts.
So the church that you meet in, do you actually have a building or a place for worship, or do you have to meet in a house or a school or some other type of storefront?
Yeah, we started meeting in a home, and recently in February of this year, we have a sports center kind of thing that we've built for kids in the Tsunami zone, where we have a little bouldering wall and some weightlifting equipment and ping pong table, and just a real basic structure there that kids after school come and play at. And so from February of this year, we kind of outgrew the home, and we've been meeting over there. Our model in Osaka was to multiply and as we could and start churches in different homes. We've been having a hard time figuring out how to do that there in Ishinomaki, because the people have suffered so much loss that the idea of, okay, you guys go over here and meet, and you guys go over here and meet, has felt scary to them or stressful to them. And so we're figuring out what model works best in this context. So we're still trying to figure that out. But right now, we meet on Sundays in that facility, where the sports center kind of facility.
So we're praying about starting something maybe at that same spot on Fridays for a different kind of subset of, say, a younger group of people who come there often, or something in the neighboring cities, just kind of branching out of there to do new plants out of there.
Is there any questions we have in the audience? Mrs. Bushnell?
What's happening now that you're not there? Are there leaders there that can people?
Yeah, we have a team in Ishinomaki. There's 3 missionary couples, families that work together. Actually, one of them's Japanese. The husband is half Japanese, half American, and the wife is Japanese. And then another American couple that work with us, and then several singles that are with us. So they're leading out. Osaka we pass that on to some Japanese leaders, and they are leading out there in Osaka, doing a good job.
Any others?
I missed something in understanding when you were talking about how sending people to different areas is I'm not really understanding their fear around. Is it because they've been worshiping together for some time? Build connections.
Yeah, so the loss of community has been such a strong pain in that area. And so about a year ago, I started trying to do some vision casting, and saying, hey, pretty soon, this has been great. We've been, getting to know each other, worshiping God together, praying together, but there's so many people in this area who don't know Jesus, and we need to kind of start to spread out. And I'm trying to vision cast, maybe some of us will move over here to this neighborhood, or some will go over here. And I got a lot of pushback from that. They just weren't ready. So it may happen, but most likely right now what we're thinking about, the first kind of baby steps towards that, was another town that's about 15 minutes away. And then that'll be a more natural place to start. And then those who have a passion for outreach, we can go together with them to start something over there.
Are you talking about moving your actual homes or just the worship center?
Yeah, just move the worship time into somebody else's home or somebody else's business or somewhere, some open space, available space.
Would you mind telling them how the Tsunami project got started? How you put it up?
The first few months after the tsunami, we had volunteers and lots of teams coming through and picking up, just helping clean up. And of course, in the rubble, the kitchens are on the first floor in Japan, and there's lots of broken dishes, pottery, teapots, those kinds of things. And one of our current teammates, when she was up there the first time, picked up something and said, "There's got to be something you can do with this." And so she had also had connections with a friend in a part of China that they were pulling women out of prostitution and teaching them a trade of making jewelry. And so God kind of combined those things in her heart and head. And after they moved up there, they followed us in moving up there a few months later. And then that following summer, with some friends that she had made connections with in the school, some school moms, they got together and started seeing what can you do with this pottery. And that fall of 2012, we launched. Actually, we had a couple women come over from California, and they created some designs and trained about 10 women at that time to make jewelry. And then they started in October, and it has just taken off. They've improved. They've just really gotten skilled at what they're doing. They'll cut and grind these pieces, and then we purchase beads from different kinds of beads, and they make these designs. And it's become a part-time job we have 19 women currently working, but for us it's a place of ministry. We hope to see these people just really fall in love with Jesus, and so as well as providing them as well as providing them with an income that helps support them, and the schedule is very flexible. A lot of these women are moms. There's a few single moms in the group, and so they have a way of earning an income, something that's giving them renewed dignity. Most of the women there, if they have a job, will work in a fish processing factory or something like that. But here they're creating beauty. Our theme is beauty from brokenness, and that we see as, obviously for us, it has two meanings. And we're hoping to see, broken lives transformed into beautiful things for Jesus. And actually, just 2 Sundays ago, one of the girls who started working there in April was baptized in the sea there in Nishinamaki. But she comes out of very broken family, lots of cutting, suicidal, even attempts, I think. But anyway, she's suffered abuse, but she's seen something in our team, and as we try to share Jesus with her, she's seen something that she wants, and so she's given her life to Jesus. But if you think about it, you can pray for the women of Nozomi. There's a few cards back there. You could pick one up, and you can do some shopping online. All of the money goes towards them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your time. We've got a minute or so here before the next session begins.